Hello people, I've got a bit of a different one today. Here I have a quad cast lawnmower. I picked this up for literally 15 quid, see it on Facebook, spares and repairs, not starting, and the handle was snapped on that side, but that's been repaired. I went round my mates and welded the handle back together. That's why I've just painted the two bottom sections there, just to protect, not to protect the metal. But the engine isn't starting because, as you can see there, I've clamped the handle back so I can turn it over. It's got zero compression. Now at first I was like, oh no, it's been run low on oil and it's done like major damage. But when I primed it and turned it over on the pull cord, it was firing, but there was smoke coming out underneath this cover. Blue smoke, it was like chuffing. So I took the cover off, and it seems to be is that the head gasket is blown. I don't know if you can see that, but the actual head gasket in there is blown, and that's why there's like no compression at all. As you can see, I'm just turning that over so easy. And this bolt, or one of these bolts on the top of this head, was loose. I can actually undo that with my finger. So these were loose. I've obviously rattled loose, and that's why it's not clamping the head to the block anymore, and it's allowed exhaust gases or combustion just to get past the head gasket, and it's finally blown. So I've got a new head gasket. I'm just going to bang it on there, and then fingers crossed it's going to fix it. And what an absolute steal, 15 quid. And the actual deck of this is very, very good condition. I've got the bag too. It's a nice little mower, Briggs and Stratton 35 classic engine, absolutely bulletproof. Providing you've got oil in them, they'll go on forever. Anyway, I'm just going to take these bolts out and then take the head off and go from there. See you in a bit. Just to quickly show you again, as I've just got a socket, 30mm socket. I haven't even cracked these off yet. Look how loose they are. That one's loose. This one here is loose. So I do recommend, if you have one of these engines, just to go around and try and torque these up, or just to make sure these are tight, otherwise you're going to get exactly the same problem I've just got, where the head gasket will eventually fail. But anyway, I'm going to get this off now. So just quickly, the first thing I like to do is just undo this small little 8mm bolt, which holds this guard on, and it's obviously not attached to the back because the bolt goes there, which holds the cover and this on. So took that 8mm bolt out, the guard's come off, and now I'm just going to undo these head bolts in a crisscross pattern, and then hopefully I can get the head out without taking the carb off. It doesn't matter, it's just another bolt down there just to take the whole carb assembly off of the fuel tank and all. But we'll see if we can just slide it out without leaving it all in situ. So now they're all loose, hopefully. Yep, head's nice and loose. I'm just going to take these two bolts out. Hopefully I can just slide this out of here. Like so. I like to keep all the bolts in the same threads they come out of. I know they're probably all the same size, I haven't checked, but it's just a nice thing I like to get into. And there you can see there where the head gasket's fouled because of them two bolts that were loose. So combustion has got past the head gasket, causing it to foul there. So I just need to pick this off, clean the block up, clean the head up, put the new gasket on, torque the bolts down, and hopefully we'll have compression, which will hopefully make it run. Right, see you in a bit. So all I'm doing here, just to remove the old gasket, is just with a scraper, and I'm just gonna scrape off all the old gasket there, and then once I've got all this off, I'm probably gonna just go around with a Scotch-Brite, just make sure it's all clean, all nice new surface for the new gasket to sit on both the block and the cylinder head. So there's a bit of an old gasket on there, as you can see. Now would probably be a good time to get all the carbon off the head, off the piston as well. I'll probably just put like a brass wire brush on that, just to give it all a bit of a clean up, and then wipe it off. whilst I'm here, but to be honest there's barely any carbon build up at all, but I'm just going to clean it up anyway whilst I'm here. Right, I'll see you in a bit once it's all cleaned up. Right, now I've gone ahead and cleaned up all the mating surface where the gasket's going to sit. I didn't go mega clean and try and get all the carbon off all around the valves. I've got most of it off the piston here, but I'm more worried about the mating surface where the gasket actually sits. Same with the cylinder head too. I won't too fast. You can go along and take as much time as you want to get all the carbon out there, but to be honest, I'm not really that bothered. I'm just more interested in just making sure the gasket surface is all nice and clean. Also, just if you do this, when cleaning off this, I went afterwards, just went with a bit of compressed air and blew out these bolt holes, because some old gasket went in there as I was scraping it off with my scraper. You don't want to obviously be putting the bolt down there knowing there's bits of gasket down there, because it could cause the bolt to bind up and not tighten up properly. So yeah, that is, now it's just time to put the cylinder head back on with the new gasket. Little tip, if you want to keep all the bolts in the same position as they come out, you can use the old gasket and just put the bolts through there. They look all the same length, and I don't think it matters if you just was to mix them all up, but it's just something I like to do in the nature of this type of job, just to put the bolts back in where they came out. But anyway, yeah, I'm just gonna put this is the new gasket I got from eBay. Apparently it's a genuine Briggs and Stratton one from the seller, but I'm not too sure, and it also come a bit crinkled up like that. I know that hopefully won't affect it, but it's nice to see when they're nice and flat and not bent up like that. But anyway, that's just simply going to sit like so, and then put the cylinder head back on, and hopefully we're up and running. So the way I'm going about this when putting it back on, I'm just putting the gasket on the cylinder head side and putting some bolts through just to hold it there. I'm going to slide it up and under like I did in the removal stage, leaving these two bolts out so I can get up and under that bracket there, and then once I'm in I can just start doing the bolts up with my fingers and then put them two bolts in. So I've just slid the cylinder head up and under like I said, and then just put these two bolts in. So now I'm just going to go about tightening these bolts up very, very small increments at a time, evenly. There is something on the internet for a tightening sequence for this. I can't exactly remember. I'll just post a picture of it now on the screen if I can. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to tighten these up evenly, and then I'm going to do a final torque, and I believe I found a torque spec of around 20 Newton meters for these bolts. I don't know if that's correct, so if you do this, check yourself. It's quite hard to find torques like specifications for this engine on the internet. I found it quite hard, but maybe I was looking in the wrong place, I don't know. But that's what I'm going to do, and then tighten these bolts down. I didn't put nothing on the thread of these bolts, by the way, so I'm just leaving as they are. So I've just nipped up the head bolts with a small 3/8 ratchet, and as I said before, I believe the final torque spec for these bolts are 20 Newton meters. So I've just set my torque wrench at 10 Newton meters. I'm going to go around in the sequence, tighten up the bolts, and then I'll do a final tighten at 20 Newton meters, and hopefully that'll be it. Right, so head bolts are all torqued down. I've just put the little cover back on, the little guard for the exhaust. It feels like by hand the engine has a lot more compression, but to be honest I thought it would feel like it'd have more, but I don't know, I'm not too clued up or massively clued up how that should feel with these engines. So now it's just a simple case of literally popping the top cover on, putting the air filter housing back on, and then hopefully it runs. This little cover's literally held on by 3 10mm bolts, so it's nice and straightforward to put that on, and that's just held on with one centre screw. So let's get all that on, and fingers crossed it runs. Right, so now the cover's back on. As I said before, it's just held up by a screw there, and this screw was ever so slightly different. It has a big washer around it, but that's to hold this exhaust guard on, and the one around the back here is identical to the one at the front. I'm going to leave the air filter housing off just in case I need to pour some fuel down here in case we've got carburetor issues, because I don't even know if this runs. I don't know, it wouldn't even fire up before because of that head gasket. So we'll leave it off in case I need to just squirt some stuff down there to make it run or to help it start. But in case you're wondering, that's just how the air filter housing clips onto there. And actually I had to buy a new air filter for this because I checked and there weren't even an air filter in there, worryingly. So God knows how long it had been running without an air filter, and the board didn't look that scored up, so I assume it couldn't have been run that long without it. But anyway, let's give it a few pumps on the old primer and see what happens. Right, here we go. Got my vice clamps on there, vice grips just to hold the bar back. So let's see what happens. So it runs, a bit smoky, but I think that might just be where oil sat in the exhaust. So I'm going to leave it running and hopefully that'll burn off. Hopefully it isn't actually burning oil. And it seems to be running quite slow, so I think I need to adjust these governor springs to make the RPM or make it rev a bit higher. That don't sound like it's revving that fast, but I'm going to have a little fiddle about and see how it runs. So that's that. I adjusted that governor spring a little bit just by bending the tab, just to simply make it a bit tighter. I don't know if you can see in there, but that tab right in front of you, I just bent it towards me, towards the front, and then that just made that spring a little bit tighter, therefore it just revs a little bit faster. And it also run a lot better when I put this air filter housing on. I don't think they like running that smoothly without that. And I've let it run, it isn't burning oil anymore. It was just where there was some oil sat in the exhaust. A lot of the time people tip these on their side and then turn the blade and it fills up the air filter with oil. That's probably why it was thrown away or chucked, because these are washable, but someone just probably thought it was used like completely filled up with oil, so they've just chucked it. And then it puts oil into the cylinder as well, and it also gets into the exhaust, which runs out the exhaust valve. So when you start them up, they smoke sometimes heavy for about 10 minutes and then it will all burn off and clear up. If it carries on smoking, then it's the rings that are damaged and will need replacing. But it runs a lot smoother now. It probably could do with a diaphragm kit in the carburetor. They're very, very easy to change. It's just take this top off, take the shroud off again, and use just some screws around the edge of the carburetor, and it's just a rubber diaphragm in there for spring. And that makes them run a lot smoother if they're like running rough or popping and running too rich. It could be the diaphragm in there, but I'll just show you it running now. So yeah, it runs pretty much spot on. It does surge a little bit, so I might put a diaphragm kit in it, considering you can pick them up on eBay for like £3. But anyway, I'm happy. Bargain really, 15 quid, and I've got the grass box. So yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and that's how you do a head gasket on a Briggs and Stratton 450 series NG 148cc, and the 35 Classic. They're identical pretty much, so that's how you do a head gasket on one of them. And if anyone in the comments, if you're watching and you know the specific torque spec for these bolts, do comment, because I don't know if what I've talked them up to is correct, but it works, so it's done something. And also I used a 13mm for these bolts, but the socket didn't fit just right, so I believe it might be in an imperial socket for that. Same thing for that, I just used an 8mm, but it didn't fit that well. But a 13mm and an 8mm socket is good enough to do the job. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.